Make no mistake, the terror regime in Iran loves the weakness of Kamala Harris.
How can we trust Kamala Harris to represent us in front of the most dangerous regimes in the world if she won't even sit for an interview with the American media?
So as all of this is happening, the president of Iran was in the United States, where he took to the stage at the United Nations and criticized Israel over the war in Gaza. Listen.
The world has witnessed the true nature of the Israeli regime. It has witnessed how the regime carries out atrocities in Gaza and how in 11 months it has murdered in cold blood over 41,000 innocent people. They label the freedom-loving and brave people around the world who protest against their genocide as anti-Semitic. They label oppressed people who have stood up against 7 decades of occupation and humiliation as terrorists.
Wow. Well, outside the United Nations, thousands of protesters rallied against his speech and demanded justice for victims of Iran's regime. Ali Reza Jafarzadeh is the deputy director of the U.S. for the National Council of Resistance of Iran and the author of The Iran Threat. He also worked to expose the major nuclear sites in Iran in 2002, which triggered the inspection of those Iranian nuclear sites. He joins us now. It's great to have you. You're such an impressive person. And I want to talk to you about this speech yesterday from Iran's new president, who just entered office after the former president, Ibrahim Raisi, was killed in that helicopter crash. Yesterday, he acted as if October 7th never happened. And he said Iran has never initiated a war. It has only defended itself heroically against external aggression. What do you think about this speech at this time?
Well, who's going to listen to the Ayatollahs that have been repeating the same rhetoric for the past 4 decades, at the same time that they have been labeled by the international community, including the United States, as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism? Look at all the chaos around the world. The Iran regime is right there at the epicenter of that. The world has seen, especially over the past few months, that the head of the snake of war and terror lies in Tehran. And of course, the regime kills people, boasts about human rights, wages the most terror attacks, and has all these proxies around the world, while putting the blame on everybody else, taking people hostage and seeking actually concessions. So that's the language. And every 4 years, the Iran regime's president come to the UN and repeat the same rhetoric, whether they're labeled as moderates or radicals. It would make no difference. I think the world has to look at the other side, which is the people of Iran. What is it that the people of Iran want? And you've seen 9 rounds of major uprisings in Iran, people wanting change. And you just mentioned thousands of enthusiastic people were Iranian Americans coming from all over the country right in front of the UN.
Yeah, and you were one of them. You were there at the protest.
I was there, and along with thousands of others. The level of enthusiasm was really impressive. You saw people from all ages, and they had 3 distinct messages. First, Pezeshkian is not the representative of the people of Iran.
Right.
He only represents Khamenei and the regime and the mass murder.
Yeah.
Second, that the demand and the desire of the people is regime change. And third, there is an alternative to the Ayatollahs that is so powerful and has introduced a 10-point plan for the future of Iran, which is diametrically opposite to the views of the mullahs.
Well, if that protest took place on Iranian soil, all those thousands of people that were in New York City would be thrown in jail. So thank God you could protest here. But it is remarkable that the Iranian president was here yesterday, especially on the same day that the Trump campaign released a statement saying that Donald Trump was briefed on real and specific threats from Iran to assassinate him. The campaign says President Trump was briefed earlier today by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence regarding real and specific threats from Iran to assassinate him in an effort to destabilize and sow chaos in the U.S. Make no mistake, the terror regime in Iran loves the weakness of Kamala Harris and is terrified of the strength and resolve of President Trump. He will let nothing stop him or get in his way to fight for the American people. So there's a political statement in there and a real threat that both sides of the aisle would agree with. What do you think about that?
Well, no matter who's in the White House, the Ayatollahs, they don't care. They're just looking for to see where they can get concessions. So I think, the White House, whether now or in the future, they have to look at the new realities on the ground. You mentioned the people of Iran. That's the missing factor that has dominated the policies. That should become the central policy of the United States, because at the end of the day, so long as the mullahs rule in Iran, not only the killings will continue in Iran, but the whole region will continue to be aflame. And the solution is actually regime change by the people of Iran. And
that we know of, and they may or may not involve, but possibly do, Iran. But I don't really know, can't be sure, because in the first case in Butler, Pennsylvania, great place, and we're going back to Butler, by the way, we're going to go back and finish our speech. The FBI has been unable to open the 3 potentially foreign-based apps. And in the second case, the assassin had 6 cell phones in his car, yet the FBI has likewise been unable to penetrate their guard. Shouldn't be tough to do. They want to know, and I want to know, and the whole country and maybe the world wants to know, who is he calling? Who is he calling? In the old days, the FBI and the DOJ used to capture people before anything happened. In current days, the upper echelon of the FBI is all talk while they focus on the sitting president's political opponents. That's what they're doing. They spend so much time. We won the case in Florida. It's all a big scam. It's all against a political opponent, me, who's doing better in the polls than anybody else, and should be hopefully able to recapture the presidency in 41 days and make our country great again. But all they focus on is their political opponent. But they must get Apple to open these foreign apps, and they must get Apple to likewise open the 6 phones from the second lunatic, who's a lunatic, and open them immediately, because we have a lot at stake, whether it's me or any other former president. They break into apps all the time. They had no problem breaking into the apps of the J6 hostages. They broke into those apps. And they could be Iran-based, they could also be something else, but we'll never know until they're opened, and they got to get them opened. And really, why is it that the father of the shooter in the Butler instance has one of the best and most expensive lawyers in the entire state of Pennsylvania? How did he get to this expensive lawyer, big law firm, the biggest in Pittsburgh? Where did he get this big law firm from? It's sort of strange. If I were president and a former president and a leading candidate, I'm the leading candidate by far to be the next president. And that leading candidate was under threat. If I was president and the candidate was under threat, any candidate, Republican or Democrat, and by the way, I want to thank the Democrats because they just increased funding for the Secret Service, who worked very hard. They increased funding for the Secret Service, and nobody will believe this. It was a unanimous vote. Republicans, every single Republican, every single Democrat present voted in favor. That was the first unanimous vote we've seen in a long time, and that's to increase the funding of the Secret Service. So I thank everybody in Congress. But if I were the president, I would inform the threatening country, in this case Iran, that if you do anything to harm this person, we are going to blow your largest cities and the country itself to smithereens. We're going to blow it to smithereens. You can't do that. And there would be no more threats. There would be no more threats. But right now, we don't have that leadership or the necessary people, the necessary leaders. We have 2 people, not one. We don't even know who our president is right now. Who is our president right now? We really don't know, but we have 2 people, not one, that only keep looking. And when you do that, when you just look, trouble always ensues. So it's big trouble for our country. Meanwhile, we have the president of Iran in our country this week. We have large security forces guarding him, and yet they're threatening our former president and the leading candidate to become the next president of the United States. Certainly a strange set of circumstances. Around the world, our enemies are desperate to prevent Donald Trump from returning to the White House because they know I will make America great again. They don't want that. 4 years ago, our country was feared and respected, and our country will soon be feared and respected again. We have to have that. And that's why we all need to pull together to thwart these attempts and to bring back American strength, power, and prestige. We will soon have it back. No threat will shake me. No enemy will intimidate me. And I have never been more determined than I am today, and I will never back down in my fight to make America great again, which is what we're doing. So I want to make that statement because we are under threat. I have been threatened very directly, and I appreciate the agencies that we've been meeting with, but we've been threatened very directly by Iran. And I think you have to let them know, because the best way to do it is through the office of the president, that you do any attacks on former presidents or candidates for president, your country gets blown to smithereens, as we say. 41 days from now, we are going to win the state of North Carolina. We are going to defeat Comrade Kamala Harris, and we are going to take back our country. We're going to take it back. Yesterday, I was in Georgia, a great place, to outline my plan for an American manufacturing renaissance. That's what we're doing. We got tremendous reviews on that speech. Now today, Kamala Harris is supposedly announcing her so-called plans to support manufacturing and wealth creation. Why didn't she do it 3.5 years ago? They've done nothing. Why didn't she do everything 3.5 years ago? She's been there for almost 4 years, and she didn't do it. She didn't create wealth. She destroyed 22% of the value of every dollar in your pocket and jeopardized us in front of the remaining portions of the marketplace.